Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sharing a Drink with Matt. Today I'm talking to rock band from Melbourne, Treebeard. Thank you.
Hey man, how you going?
Hey, big fella. Just getting rid of a few animals.
It's all right. That's a
How you
cutie.
been anyway?
Yeah, good man. Sorry, it took me a little while to load in. I haven't used Zoom in quite a while, so I was like,
Yeah.
just doing IT.
Thank
But yeah, I'm good,
you
man.
so much.
No, that's all right. Thanks for having me. Sorry it's taken so long to kind of get to this point. There was a bit of a back and forth for a little while, but
Yeah.
made it. That's the main
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen you posting a lot lately.
Mm.
Is there a new album coming out or?
Nah, so we're currently sort of recording and writing at the moment, so working on a new album. It's very time consuming and sometimes costs a bit of money as well for advertising and stuff, but it's we find it quite helpful to just keep doing that, and then you can sort of feel it organically grow as time goes on, I think. But yeah.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So where'd the name come from?
Treebeard. Well, it's reference to Lord of the Rings. So we're all kind of big nerds in the band. So watching those movies, books as well. I wasn't too good at reading them when I was a kid, obviously, because they're quite dense and long, but liked it at the time. And then the other guys.
It'll take too long anyway. But
That's all right. Yeah. What was it?
My wife's sister, her husband, his brother actually worked on Lord of the Rings in the art department.
No kidding. That's mad.
So I've got this shirt, Lord of the Rings. Tammy's brother. Oh, Tammy's stepbrother. Go away. Yeah, I've got this Lord of the Rings shirt. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think it was the second one, art department. And I haven't washed it because it's got paint on one arm from the art department. So
that's so cool. Yeah, that's wild, man.
Yeah, I'm stoked with it. I'll never wear it. Just it's
keep
put
it
away
there
somewhere. That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So what was playing on the stereo at your place when you were growing up?
I suppose music was always a big thing growing up. I feel like my earliest memory of a lot of any music would have been Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, because I would have been a kid. So obviously that song kind of sticks out because it's pretty wacky and full on at points. And then when you get older, you sort of appreciate how brilliant it is. Beyond that, like my old man, he was into, a lot of the sort of classic rock bands like Pink Floyd and Rolling Stones and, a lot of those classics. And then because my mum and dad kind of were younger, the Australian Braithwaite and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Started exploring on my own. Linkin Park was probably the gateway band for me because they were big around the time I was a kid. And I kind of just went from there. Where I went into, 90s grunge kind of stuff, and then eventually a lot of metal, so like Lamb of God and Machine Head, Pantera.
Yep.
And then eventually got into more prog kind of music, so stuff like Tool, and kind of just went from there, which is sort of how I ended up playing music like us in Treebeard, and
yeah. Oh, Maynard's just brilliant. I think he'd be a lot of rock bands, and as you said, pre-cog. Yeah, Maynard, he's the leader of all that. Like he's a fucking. I'm a big Tool fan. I think it was amazing. I saw him in Brisbane in '92, I think it was.
Oh, no kidding.
95 maybe. The stage show was fucking brilliant, man.
Yeah.
Well, what was it out of all that influenced you to what you're doing now?
I suppose it's kind of hard to chalk it down to just one thing, because I like to think that kind of combine all your influences together, and that's sort of how you get that sort of different sound. It's not like if you're sort of trying to go for one band particularly, it kind of comes out a bit too derivative. Like say, I don't know, if your favorite band's AC/DC, you're going to sound like AC/DC kind of thing. So I suppose with the genre, which most people would put us in this genre called post-rock, which is why Russian Circles and Mono and stuff like that. So a lot of those bands. So I remember getting into Mogwai around sort of 16 or 15 maybe. And I just really liked the sort of range of the music. So it'd go from like these really ambient, sort of tranquil passages into like, you know, massive, over the top, like dissonant, you know, delay oscillating. It like you don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I always found that really kind of cool and appealing, and it looked like a lot of fun to be playing that kind of music because you're kind of just getting all your energy out, and then you're bringing it back down, and then over and over. So yeah, I'm trying to think specifically with Treebeard. I've been in a couple of bands in Melbourne for a little while. I moved to Melbourne in 2014, and I was playing in like a few different sort of like rock, blues, alternative rock bands, that kind of thing. And when I started writing stuff, it kind of came out sort of in this more ambient, melancholic kind of way. And none of the bands I was in really would fit that kind of sound or approach. So I sort of started just writing for myself. And yeah, eventually it sort of just blossomed into this Treebeard thing. And now that's pretty much my only band and sort of my main priority as a musician or as an artist, or however you want to put it. Yeah.
So are you playing your favorite genre, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like I sort of try to bring in different genres into it. So like even though post-rock or like progressive music is kind of where my heart's at, I do still listen to like a lot of other stuff. So like when I listen to metal, I'm like, oh, I wish I could do like a really heavy breakdown riff sort of part in a song like that. So I'll just write a song with that, you know. Or yeah, like, or I might listen to like some more acoustic singer-songwriter kind of stuff and really like sort of the type of atmosphere you can make with like acoustic instruments, or more sort of like, yeah, old-fashioned kind of sounds and that kind of thing. So I might, you know, write an acoustic song or something like that. So definitely, yeah, Treebeard, I wouldn't, you know, it sounds weird to say it, but it's like, it's definitely my favorite kind of music, even though it's my own music, but it's like, it's the music that I would want to hear if I was making it, I guess. Yeah.
Has anybody put you in the same like category as Incubus or anything?
Not because so much Incubus. Yeah.
I found that sound. I kind of listening to you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of Incubused me. So
I guess, yeah, actually, yeah, I suppose in the guitar approach, because I forgot his name, Mike, I think, from Incubus. He's real like effects heavy with the way he plays guitar, and he does all those like delay volume swells and plays some interesting chords. So I guess, yeah, I can see a resemblance there. And like maybe similarly to like Deftones or something, because they have a sort of shoegaze approach to their music as well. And I'd say Incubus and Deftones are similar in some ways. But yeah, I didn't really grow up listening to much Incubus. I only got into them more recently. I was listening to, what's the album called? Morning Glory. I can't remember the name of it. It's a good album. Morning View. Yeah, so I got into that maybe a couple of years ago, and then I've listened to some of their other stuff as well. But yeah, it's an interesting link. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah. No worries. Do you do covers at all?
We floated the idea in the band a couple of times. So like I have made a couple of different sort of demo versions of covers. Like I tried my hand at doing Love Reign Over Me by The Who, because I always loved that song growing up, and I feel like it's a very progressive song for its time, the way it's sort of composed and made. And there are a couple of other ones that I'm forgetting now. I think a Nine Inch Nails song as well. Great Below.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely an idea. It's more just time and where we sort of want to allocate the effort. So obviously we'd rather be focusing on our own stuff. And especially when we play gigs, you know, most sets we do are 35, max 45 minutes long.
Yeah, you don't want to cover on that. Yeah.
Our originals are already quite long. Like most of our songs are at least like 7 minutes long, and like the longer ones are like 10 minutes. So you can only fit so many of your own songs in already.
Exactly.
So there's not really time for covers, unfortunately. We find a lot of the time. If we ever get to a point where we're playing like, you know, hour-long, 2-hour-long sets, we might think about playing some. But yeah.
yeah. Like touring wise, like playing gigs and everything. Do you ever find that you're on the wrong bill, or you're different to all the other bands? Like, are you?
Yeah.
Who like the person that gets you the gigs? Are they doing a good job, or are they putting you with some punk band or something?
Well, I'm sort of the one that does a lot of the gig organizing, so I could definitely be doing a better job. I'm being honest with myself. But it kind of depends on the gig, and also it's not a necessarily bad thing to have different sorts of bands on a bill. It's just kind of what you're going for. But in Melbourne particularly, there's not many bands within our sort of genre or sound. There's only like maybe 4, 5, 6 maybe, and you can't always get everyone who's available to play those gigs, and also you don't want to play gigs with the exact same bands every time either.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just not a huge scene for post-rock particularly, and even prog or like prog metal. The scene's kind of suffered a lot with COVID and everything else as well. So a lot of the like big sort of promoters and festivals and things like that aren't really around anymore. Hopefully they'll come back now that things are starting to subside. So we kind of just take what we can get, and if we think it's a worthwhile gig, we'll go for it. But yeah, it's definitely interesting going from us to say like a full prog metal sort of like Periphery-esque or Carnival style band, where it's like much more sort of like melodic with big, you know, big choruses and these sort of jetty Meshuggah riffs and that kind of thing, and they're playing like 7 strings, and we're just here with our single coil guitars and yeah.
So look, have you ever been on the bill and you're playing to a bunch of guys that's in the Slim Dusty, or you're just playing and everyone's just looking at you going, well, fuck.
Yeah, we played a gig in Bendigo back in I think it was March this year. And for people who don't know, sort of Victoria or Australia, Bendigo is a small sort of country town, maybe
definitely
2-hour drive out of Melbourne. And they don't have heaps of music venues. So the one we went to mainly does like country singer-songwriter gigs. So when we actually got in there with our amps and our guitars and stuff, they actually had a band playing already, and they were playing sort of like bluegrass country kind of stuff. And we were just like, where the fuck are we? Like, what? This is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Well, it actually wasn't that long ago that me and the family were down in Melbourne, and we actually stayed on the way back. We stayed in a motel in Bendigo. I didn't even see a pub. I did not even see a pub.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of spread out the town. Like the place we played at was not even near sort of the main town part. It was maybe like 5-minute drive out. And then I've played gigs in Bendigo before. They used to have a massive music venue called the Music Man Megastore, which was like in the main street of Bendigo, but that kind of went under, unfortunately. So we got in there and we were like, oh, how's this going to go? Because our first 2 songs are like quite heavy, you know, drop C, palm muted guitars, very metallic kind of sound. We kind of like to kick our sets off with a bang, so we go for the heavy songs first, and then sort of bring in the more atmospheric stuff later. We're a bit worried, but I feel like because our music isn't particularly tied to one thing, and it's not so abrasive that people will just instantly write it off. There's not like, you know, heaps of screaming vocals or anything like that. So even though the sound of the instruments is heavy, people can kind of tolerate it and go along for the ride. And we didn't play to many people, but people loved us when we did play. Like, we sold heaps of merch up there, because I suppose, if it's not a sound you get very much in Melbourne, you wouldn't get it in Bendigo either, to a even more extreme extent. So I think people were just like, oh, this is cool, different, nice to have up here. And so no, like even, don't judge a book by its cover, I guess, and just have fun and do your thing was the moral of that story, I suppose.
So, your favourite venue?
Oh, I don't know. Kind of depends what you're going for, but the Old Bar, which is a venue in Collingwood in Melbourne, it's on Johnston Street, is quite cool. It's very small, like it's not a big size venue, but we had our album launch there. There's a whole video of it on YouTube, actually. So you can get a sense of like the size of it and sort of the vibe as well. But it's really intimate, and the people running it are really cool. The sound's actually really good considering how small it is.
Excellent.
So that's definitely up there. And then we also played a gig at a place called Shot Kickers, which is a fairly new venue. We played that maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was actually awesome. Like the sound was like one of the best sounds we've ever had on stage. We're a very noisy band, so we struggle to get good sound when we are playing. And yeah, staff again were just really lovely. It's a small venue, but it looks packed when you get a few people in there, so that's always nice to get. And maybe it was just packed, I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot of good places around Melbourne for sure. Yeah.
Have you played out of Victoria?
No, not yet, unfortunately. I have played out of Victoria with other bands. So like I played in Adelaide once or twice, and then in New South Wales as well. But we haven't sort of made our way out of Victoria just because of the whole like we started as a band in 2019, so just before COVID, like late 2019. So we didn't play gigs for like probably a year or a year and a half, and then we had a couple in between the two big lockdowns, and then another, however many months went by. So we've kind of had a bit of a slow start as a band, even though like, the album came out and it did pretty well on like YouTube and streaming and that kind of thing. Gig wise, there's still a lot to work on for sure. So we're hoping to play in Sydney some point later this year or maybe early next year. And then when we put our next album out, we'll probably look at doing shows more widespread. So maybe up in Brisbane, maybe in some other towns in New South Wales, go to Adelaide, half the band's from Adelaide. So yeah.
So is there a worse venue?
I don't want to say, because I don't want to talk too much about a venue, but there's definitely places around. There's places around any venue that like, doesn't pay you or like tries to take cuts from like your merch sales or doesn't give you a rider, basically. Any venues that just don't treat you well. Yeah.
Like that is disgusting. I've heard about this, how they're doing that. Like, fuck me. Yeah, no, I'd still try to get, like, I've spoken to a few bands that have said that, and I've been in the scene since '83, and I've never ever fucking heard of this shit. I have never heard of it, man. And now I'm getting bands that are telling me that they're doing that. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man. It's not something I've encountered more recently, but definitely over like my years playing in bands around Melbourne and other places as well. Yeah, you do get that sometimes, and it's like, yeah, well, I'm not playing here again, kind of thing,
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So,
as you brought it up the COVID when you first and everything.
Yeah.
How did you deal with the COVID? Because you guys were 270 days or something in full lockdown. What were you sending like little tunes to each other or?
Yeah. So the album we're currently working on to record right now, I actually wrote it, probably over 2 years ago now. So it would have been the first lockdown. And when was it? March or April 2020. And actually up to that point, I was really struggling to write. Like I'd written the music for the album that we already have out now, and that was great and everything. And I was kind of like, where the hell do I go from here, sort of thing. And it took me ages to even just get like half a song barely done. And COVID was terrible for a lot of reasons, but it was good that it actually got me sitting down in an apartment. I was living in an apartment on my own at the time, and I had all the time in the world to work on music. So I wrote everything pretty much in the space of like 2 weeks. I just wake up, have some breakfast, play guitar, maybe chill out for a bit, go back and play some guitar, and just constantly just sort of ruminating and writing on that stuff. So it was good in sort of getting ahead on our music and sort of getting a bunch of songs written. And even then, we've got like half of the next album after this one that we're currently working on written as well. So there's like heaps of stuff there. But in terms of getting the band's name out there, it fully sucked because we started off with an EP out and we played a couple of gigs and we were starting to build our name a little bit within, the small post-rock scene in Melbourne, to where like bands that I had like seen gigs for years before were like following us on social media, or like a couple of people would come to our gigs and that kind of thing. And it was like, oh, wow. That was quick. And then COVID immediately just killed it. So we were kind of just lingering for ages. And then we managed to record the album in sort of the gaps between the lockdowns. And then we released it in June last year. And we're hoping, let's play gigs. Let's get out there. This is going to be great. And lockdown again for another like 3-4 months, however long that one was. So it put a damper, and there's a real dissonance between the band's sort of success online and the band's success in like a real local level. So like online, we've got, like a YouTube video that's got like 30,000 views and a couple other videos that got like tens of thousands of views. And you add it all up, it's quite a lot. And then like streaming on just Spotify or whatever, we've got like a fair few listens on there as well. So like we've got more fans overseas than we do here. Like you look at our top cities on Spotify or whatever, and the top cities, like the first 2 or 3 aren't in Australia. They're in like Turkey or Germany or something like that. So
well, hey, I'm with you on the, you got to get a bit done with the COVID thing, because this show wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, right.
I was sitting at home, bored shitless. I had fucking bored shitless, and I thought, I might fucking start doing interviews. Might start interviewing bands, and that would not have happened if I would be at work. I would have been at work, and but thanks, COVID.
The best and worst of times.
All right, this is good because it's only you. Usually there's like, not usually, I usually have just one person, but a lot of the time there's 4 or 5 people in the band. But this question is, you have got the opportunity to put out.
Give it!
Well, get away!
Don't touch my phone!
Can you please move? Before I knock you out?
Don't touch my phone.
Sorry, man, I've got kids.
That's all right.
Okay, so you were given the opportunity to put a 5-band gig together. Who would be the 5 bands?
That we would be playing with, or just 5 bands playing on a gig
together? You can be on the bill too. You can be.
I'll put us on the bill just so I can play with them.
You're on the bill.
Yeah, great. All right. So there'd be us. We probably open because that would not make sense for us to be playing ahead of any of the other ones. That's tricky. Even though they're like more of a full metal band, Gojira, one of my favorite bands in the world. I've even got like a tattoo of one of their album arts on my arm and everything like that. They're a real big deal for me. So I'll probably put them as the headliner, and then below them, maybe a band like Alcest as well. They're a French band. They're also a French band. Yeah, they're both French bands. That's funny. So yeah, they're really cool as well. Maybe Russian Circles, who are an American band, and like you can hear their influence on our sound a lot. Just in terms of like their approach to like writing riffs and like creating like a heavy atmosphere and that kind of thing. I feel like a lot of people compare us to them.
Who are they called?
Russian Circles. Yeah,
I'll just write that down because I want to. I've never heard of them and I want to give them a listen.
Yeah,
Russian.
they're good, man.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
and they're American,
aren't they? Sorry?
They're American?
Yeah, they're from Chicago or something like that. So yeah, maybe them. Then maybe We Lost the Sea, who are a band from Sydney that are probably like the biggest of this sort of sound in the country, I would say. Really, really good band. Like just really brilliant songs and like compositions and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to really articulate. And then I don't know. Was that, how many was that? That's 1, 2, 3. All right,
you got one more.
Damn. There's a band called Brutus who are from Belgium that I really like as well. They're sort of like a fusion of our kind of music with more like a hardcore punk kind of approach. So like the vocals are very shouty and very like catchy at the same time still. And they've got a drummer who she also sings and plays drums at the same time, and her voice is like absolutely amazing and like so like intense and epic. And I don't know how she sings and plays what she's playing on drums already at the same time, but she does it. So yeah, that's the 5. So what is it? Us, then Brutus, then We Lost the Sea, and Alcis, then Gojira, and that's my dream lineup.
Excellent. Yeah. That might happen one day. Probably not, but it might.
Yeah.
When you started getting into the music, did you have anyone give you a bit of advice on what you're doing? And like, okay, when you were in doing the album,
yeah,
did you have free reign, or did you have to say, come on?
As in, like, in terms of like me writing for the band, like I tell everyone else what to do.
Yeah, in terms of recording, was there a producer saying, "Don't like it, do it this way," blah blah blah?
Okay. Nah, so we do our recording in-house. So our guitar player Josh, he's got his own home studio set up, and he's like a very talented producer and like makes real high grade professional quality kind of stuff. Like you can hear it on our album. But so he's in the band. He, we all give each other suggestions, right? So if we feel like something doesn't work and we need to like change a part or a melody or something like that, then we express that and then we all kind of work it out together. I write everything for the band more or less, but I'm not like a sort of dictator who's telling people they have to do it my way or they can get fucked. I'm more kind of willing and happy to collaborate. I think it makes it better. Because I don't think I have all the answers to everything necessarily. So like we're all pretty collaborative, and even though like it's one guy writing it, I'm very happy to take suggestions. And if they were to write a song and show it to me, and we felt it fit, I'd love that because it would take a bit of a load off me as well. But so it's a very sort of chill collaborative process, and because we record in-house, we don't really have to worry about outside opinions coming in unless we ask for them, which we do. Like I'll ask friends or people, hey, what do you reckon of this song? Does this work? Because it's sometimes hard to see like the forest through the trees in a sense, whereas
yeah. Well,
sorry, Dad.
There's always a bit of ooh-ahs when you're in the studio, like. So, did anybody have the last word?
I mean, it would probably always be me at the end of the day, because like they like as much as I'm happy for them to kind of put their own stamp on things and influence things in their own way. A lot of the other guys are really happy to kind of let me drive the ship because it is much simpler that way. I've been in bands before where like you'll have multiple people trying to write at the same time, and it doesn't work because everyone has their own idea of what they want the band to be. So, and they've been through that experience as well themselves with other bands themselves, so they know that it's easier to just have one or two people maybe drive everything. So they leave it to me, but I'm always going back to them being like, hey guys, what do you reckon? Is this okay? And they're like, yeah, no, it's fine. You got this, pal, kind of thing. So yeah, I guess I am the last word, but it's never like this sort of boss mentality, I guess. Yeah.
So who are Treebeard? Not who are the members,
Yeah.
but who are Treebeard?
I suppose like our bio just says that we're a cathartic, emotional post-rock or post-metal band. We write very long, very dynamic songs that go through lots of highs and lows. And I suppose our main sort of point is to try and take the listener on a journey with us through those highs and lows, and just sort of let people get lost in the music and the experience of listening to the music. We're not trying to sort of be like impressive with our instruments or anything. We're not trying to like show you how good my guitar solo is or how fast we can play drums or something. Like, we're very much about using musical instruments to kind of create like a tapestry or like a piece of art that kind of evokes an emotion or like an atmosphere, basically. That sounds real wanky how I put that, but that's sort of the idea. So yeah, like our music's pretty conceptual. Like, we try to sort of give it themes and like sort of subtle messages and things like that to kind of get people thinking as well as listening as well. And yeah, I suppose, yeah, it's kind of where how I would describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. So I've asked you about people have given you advice. Have you got advice for bands starting up in your genre?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's tricky. I haven't thought about that. I feel like I'll be the last person to be giving advice because I've sort of been figuring everything out as I go along.
Mate, you're doing brilliant. Yeah. I actually, sorry, I've got to say
Thanks,
this.
Man.
I actually, I wanted to interview you because just the hard work you've been putting in to promote the band, like every day. I get on Facebook or something and bang, you guys are there.
That's good, man.
Fucking day.
It's working. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, so you've got to have advice that you can give to, like, fucking hard work and shit.
Yeah,
that's what it takes.
Yeah. I suppose like we're not a punk band, but the way we sort of work as not a business, but like as a project, I guess, is fairly DIY and punk and that kind of philosophy where it's like, we don't have the same resources as bands that are like maybe on a label would have, or bands that have like connections already built up. We've kind of had to do a lot of it ourselves. So, in terms of like content creation, that's often sort of my end. So like, for example, I've edited some of our music videos, which are on YouTube now, like you can check them out. And
yep.
I didn't know how to edit or like make films at all before the pandemic, actually. So I actually took it upon myself to, get Premiere Pro, get the software, learn how to use it, get some like, plugins, get some stock footage, learn how to use a camera, that kind of thing. And you get that with other members of the band as well. So like Reese, who's our bass player, he does a lot of our design for us because he's a graphic designer.
Yep.
So, kind of just taking everyone's skill sets and using them for the band. So Josh, the guitar player, who is a producer, so he mixes and records and masters our music as well. So it's kind of just, looking at what you can do and what you could also learn to do as well, and putting, all of that together to work on the band as a whole. And then,
definitely.
Yeah. And then musically, just sounds a bit cliche, but just be yourself and write music that you enjoy and write music that you would like to hear.
Yeah.
As
definitely.
a listener, like try to think of it not as you in the band, try to think of it as someone who's just out, try to think of it as like, that same 16-year-old kid who's just in, finding out about different types of music for the first time.
Yeah.
You kind of go from there. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to know the name of the band, but is there a band and why that you would never play again on a bill?
I don't know. There's probably bands that we feel don't fit with our sound or us on the bill. Or like bands that maybe like have members that have done some, some bad shit, like, done something to hurt someone or something like that. Or maybe they have some like
a bit of G.G. Allen sort of shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't play with him. if he was still alive, I wouldn't go for that. I'd rather not get shit thrown on my amps and stuff.
Did you know that you actually had to pay more to be able to stand in the back?
Yeah, I mean, I would pay more to stand in the back.
I wouldn't even go see him. I don't reckon.
Yeah.
I actually interviewed Merle Allen, his brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How was that?
Totally different to his brother. They're just
I think I've heard
a
about
wonderful
that.
Man.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose it's just bands that like that some of the members have done some really dodgy stuff, or like maybe they've got some dodgy views about certain things. Yeah, like that kind of thing. But beyond that, like even if the band's not like, you might play with them once and they might not have played very well that night, I'd still like, happily play on a gig that they happen to be on as well. It's just,
everyone has their bad days.
Yeah, including us. So,
But it's like those kind of bands that show up late, get on, go, 2 or 3 songs are longer than they should be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then go home and don't stand there and watch the rest of the night. Like there's bands like that out there that really piss me off. Yeah,
that's a bit more. Yeah, I didn't even think of that kind of thing. I was thinking more sort of esoteric sort of issues. But yeah, that kind of etiquette I think is important with gigs. Like you should always be sticking around, supporting the other bands. You should always doing your best to make sure the night runs on time and runs smoothly. You should be promoting the gig to the same degree that the other bands are, maybe not as much as like a headliner is, because it's the headliner's responsibility at the end of the day, really. But yeah, like if a band's asked you to support them, you should support them. That's the point. And then you also will benefit from that as well. So even though we might be playing low on a bill, I will still have like we will still post about the gig like weekly in the lead up, and like we'll still be promoting the thing. I've even like made content for some gigs, like I've edited quick, trailers or like movies for, just to sort of have a piece of content that can like draw attention to the gig.
Yep.
So like basic sort of etiquette like that is important, and it definitely turns me off when bands don't follow it.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah.
I think, bands like that are just anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. We've gone through most of what, because we're doing pretty good answers here, and I'm going through. But when you're going, you said you've got an album coming out. Oh, not an album coming out. You got enough content to put out an album?
Yeah, like we haven't finished recording it and probably won't for a little while. But like we've got a whole album written, structured, like ready to go. We just need to do the work of actually recording it and getting it down. So yeah, we've got that coming up, and then sort of after we've got that is when we'll start doing like videos and singles and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then beyond that, we've got like half the next album written, but obviously that won't come out for a little while because we'll want to put more attention and effort in promoting this next one coming up now.
Yep.
So yeah, it's there's a lot coming up in the future. It's just kind of the timing and getting it done, because the other two, all of the other members are also in other bands that have their own schedules. And
how is that? Yeah. How is that? Because I've interviewed a few bands with members that are in 4 or 5 different bands. Like, how did and I've asked this question a million times. How do you actually fucking deal with that? How do you? Oh, we got a gig tonight. Oh shit, we're playing somewhere else.
Yeah.
Does that happen much? Is that a?
Yeah, it's
And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it does happen where like you'll have a gig offer, and then the other guys might be playing another show in another city even, or something like that. So there's like no hope of getting that to work. And it's kind of the nature of having those guys in the band. And at the end of the day, like I would still rather have them in the band because they're really good at their instruments for one thing, and they bring a lot to the band in other aspects as well, like the recording and so on. So you kind of just have to keep it in perspective and be like, yeah, we might be missing this gig, but there'll be others. And it's nice that we even got offered that gig in the first place, because that means that we're on someone's agenda or someone is aware of who we are. Yeah, it can get tricky though, like especially when you're planning sort of like long time schedules. So like one of the bands might be touring extensively in Australia or even internationally or something like that. And you're like, so how do I structure our year in comparison, especially when schedules aren't always ironed out that ahead of time either. So it's just communicating at the end of the day and just trying to kind of, negotiate and diplomacy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So we did the there's a band that you won't play with. There's the kind of band that you won't play with. Is there a band out there that you just love being on the bill with? And you can mention the name now.
Yeah. I suppose anyone who's been following us would see we played a number of gigs with a band called Mushroom Giant, who are of a similar genre. They're sort of post-rock, post-metal, very Tool-esque, I would say, in a lot of their songs. And they've been a band for a while. They've been around since like 2003 or something, I think. So they're all older dudes, but they're like really, 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 really supportive of us and always have been pretty much since they first saw us, and they're always keen to have us play with them. And they're actually a brilliant band as well. And they've got a new album coming out soon that they've been playing songs off for like the last year or so that we've been playing with them. And like I kind of know the songs already, even though the album's not out. And I'm just like, yeah, this is going to be sick. This is going to be great. And yeah, they're just really lovely guys, really supportive, great band. And always keen to support us and have us on. And I think we've gotten a lot of exposure by having our name next to theirs on a lot of bills.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, totally understand that. So, all right, this is a question I usually ask so I can go do a quick piss. Sorry, man.
That's all right.
I do a few interviews a day, so by the time I get to some interviews, I'm just like 3 or 4 long necks already in the bladder. So,
yeah, no worries.
The question is, I know I asked you who are Treebeard, but what does Treebeard have for the future? What are you guys looking at in the future? And I'm listening. I've had 2 bands that when I've done this, one guy did a brown eye and and another guy flopped it out. So yeah, there's a producer watching you, so behave. I'll be back.
Worries.
I've got another 10 minutes. Get me a thing of quickies.
What?
Quickies. Not the round ones, the square ones.
What?
And the peppermint.
What the fuck is quickies?
It's just ask Sam for heartburn tablets.
Okay.
The
But they're
square
gonna be-
one's not the round one.
And they've got to be peppermint.
Yeah.
Peppermint, please.
Peppermint.
Is he talking?
No.
Did you answer that?
Oh, was I supposed to say it to the camera? Sorry, I thought you were like leaving me to think about it. Okay.
No.
Sorry, mate. Okay, I'll be
I
real quick.
walked to the toilet and I'm listening to the silence and I'm thinking, what? Okay.
Sorry,
yeah,
mate.
now you've had the time to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, so I suppose what does Treebeard have for the future? You know, like we're all pretty realistic in our expectations in the way the music industry is, that we probably won't be able to make music a full-time living. So sort of considering that, what we would like to do would, well, obviously if it got to that point, fuck yeah, like let's do it. But you kind of have to balance that with real life stuff, relationships and housing and all that kind of stuff, right? But we just want to keep making music, keep evolving as a band and making different types of albums with different focuses and sort of emotions and that kind of thing. Having fun, playing, you know, bigger gigs with, you know, bands that we love and inspire us. So, you know, if we got to a point where we're playing gigs with bands like Gojira or We Lost the Sea or
Yeah. So have you all got day jobs? You've all got day jobs?
Yeah, we've all got day jobs. So like, you know, Reese is a graphic designer for the band, but also by trade as well. A couple of the guys are in sales. I work as a light technician at an art gallery. You know, we all do like stuff to make money because hell, we could not be making money from Treebeard to survive at this point, at least. So yeah.
Hey, it took the hard-ons nearly 20 years to start making money.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, like it's really, you really have to stick it out before you can even get to a point of being comfortable, let alone like rich or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of just you know, to keep making music and to keep having fun and to play that bigger gigs, do some touring eventually. I'd love to tour, you know, other countries like in Europe or Asia or America or wherever. It's just kind of getting to that point and then also being able to balance that with your real life stuff as well. Yeah.
100%. Is there time like everyone's got day jobs or night jobs? Is there situations where, oh fuck man, I can't play tonight, I've got a job, I've got to work tonight, or does that happen? Or have you got that understanding with your, you know, with your workplace that I'm in a band, I can't come in. That's the deal.
Depends on the member, I guess, but we all work during the day. Like we're not doing sort of like hospitality or anything. So that means that even if we're working on the day of a gig, we can normally still play it. But then, yeah, like especially like with touring internationally and things like that, there does need to be a bit of negotiation with that. I'm lucky enough to have a pretty cool boss, and I've worked in a job for a long time to where I have that relationship and can negotiate that kind of stuff. A couple of the other guys have a similar thing. Well, they might work casual, and then other guys, it's a bit more of a planning kind of thing where they have to sort of tease it out. So, no, we're all in good positions to at least play gigs in Australia and tour sort of here. And then, you know, if we got to a point of touring like Europe or, I don't know, America or something for like a month, we'd probably have to use our annual leave. Something like that.
So what's holding you back from touring overseas? Is it you haven't got the gigs, or you haven't got So
it kind of depends how you go for it. Like Josh and Bo, who are the drummer and guitar player, they play in another band that just toured Europe last year, and they don't have like touring company support or like record label support. Really, they just kind of went and did it, and some, you know, there were successes and not so much successes on that, where like they play a show where there's heaps of people, and then they play a show where there's barely any people, and you know, they sort of will learn from that and structure their next tour better. So it's kind of a matter of, well, whether you're willing to sort of wing it and just go overseas and see what happens, or if you're sort of wanting to wait until like a record label with like good connections picks you up and then links you in with a touring company that will sort you out gigs with like a bigger band in the scene, so that, you know, there's to where it's like a bit more guaranteed profit, I guess. Not even profit, just to make it like break even. So that, I would say that's what's holding us back, because like a lot of the guys are already doing that and finding it difficult, and then a couple of the other guys might be like, I'd rather know that we're going to be okay and break even, that we're not going to like spend heaps of money to play maybe some shows that weren't worth playing or something like that. So a record label would be great. A touring company would be great. You know, if a band that has a bigger name hears our music and feels like bringing us out, that would be great. So I'd say, it's kind of hard to navigate that.
So like, how does Canada, they have to show proof of 4 gigs in Australia, and their government will pay for them coming over here. They it's like it blows me.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Australia needs to do something like that, because
that'd be great.
There is so much bands out there. There's so many bands out there. There is so much good talent. Yet there's the monetary thing and the non-gig thing that Australian bands have to deal with, you know, and it's sad. It's like we need to be like Canada and be a Commonwealth. Like
it is. Australia is not the greatest country to be trying to get a band going, especially if you're trying to think about overseas touring and stuff, because we are just that isolated and so far away from a lot of those bigger music markets. Like, it makes it tricky for sure. So like government support in general for the music industry, especially local bands or like music that falls outside of like major labels and things like that, is very piss poor, I would say. You just look at the situation with COVID and venues and all of that stuff, and it's like very apparent to anyone who's been playing music at the local level. So if Canada's doing that, that's great, and that'd be awesome. But I don't see it happening personally in this country, unfortunately. But
well, it took them 40 years to actually start paying athletes in Australia. You know, to go over to whatever country for the Olympics and for the Commonwealth Games and all that sort of shit. And, you know, it took them 40 years since the first country started to do it. 40 fucking years. You know? What do you do?
Well, fingers crossed.
Might happen one day. So have you got any gigs coming up in the next few days?
Next few days, like our main focus for the next couple of months is like recording the album and getting that done. We've got a gig in December. I can't give too many details on it yet. I don't even know a lot of the details yet myself. So we're playing a gig in early December in Melbourne, and then we're going to start looking at maybe playing a gig in Sydney, which will be our first in Sydney, some point early next year. We've been chatting to a band we know up there who seem pretty keen to play with us. So yeah, we're kind of like getting the music done, and then sort of hopefully next year's a whole new year, and we can sort of, because even this year we kind of got off to a false start because of the Omicron stuff. Like we had our album launch, and we actually did all right. Like it was probably towards the end, like tapering off of the whole Omicron thing. But everyone was still very scared to go out because it was so, like, I had COVID twice. Like it was so easy to get it. So we still got like 80 people to our album launch, which, well, like I'll take that. That was very impressive. I was expecting like 5.
Yeah.
So,
with circumstances, that's good.
Yeah. So this year's kind of been up and down, and then hopefully next year's kind of just where we really start kicking things into high gear a little bit. And,
Definitely. So a different way of asking the same question. What do you want for Treebeard? What do you want?
I suppose I just want, stability to a point where it doesn't cost me money to do it, where like the money that we make goes back into the band and it breaks even. I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be a rock star, famous, cokehead or anything like that. I just want to.
But you won't mind if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you look at like people that became quickly famous and didn't necessarily want to be famous, and it seems to not go too well for them, your Kurt Cobains or whatever. So I don't know if I could handle being in that kind of world or at that kind of level, but I'd just like to, have capacity to play to fans around the world, play gigs with good bands that I love, and just be sustainable and fulfilling and artistically, challenging and interesting. Yeah.
Okay. I mainly interview punkish bands kind of thing. Is there many bands in your genre where you're from in Melbourne? Is it a big thing or
like punk in Melbourne?
No. Your genre.
Right. Not really. I feel like there used to be more sort of around those early 2010s. And there's some bands that are still around from that time period. So there's bands like Bear the Mammoth and Mushroom Giant, who I already mentioned, who are a bit older than them, who've been around for a while. And then I remember there was another band called 14 Nights at Sea that were kind of big for a little bit. But beyond that, I'm sure there's many that I'm not aware of. But in terms of the ones I can think off the top of my head, there's maybe 7, 8 that I would call post-rock myself that exist in Melbourne. It's a niche genre of music anywhere, but especially in Melbourne, in Australia, which Australia's not a big country population-wise, and it's a huge city. So it's like, you're not going to get heaps of that kind of stuff, but there is still like a lot of really good music in Melbourne that might not be post-rock, that still fits sort of what people like about the genre or just bands that I like, so yeah.
Kids. I've got 8 kids, but I've only got 3 here at the moment, but they've got fucking friends, and they do this on a Saturday because they know this is what I do on a Saturday. So they just,
that's all right.
They make
I'm not.
I try to make my interviews as unprofessional as I can. Like I don't try to do the usual interview that most interviewers do. I try to make it as far out as I can. So I don't know. I pretty much that's it.
Yeah. All right. Cool, man.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, man. Thank you for having me.
I really hope you got to say what you wanted to say. I tried to, give you enough
Yeah, no, I definitely probably said too much. But yeah.
No, man, that was great. I really appreciate it. And thank you and the rest of the band for doing what you're doing. Oh, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to interview you guys is because the hard work you guys are going through all the fucking time, man. I was like, I'll go on Facebook and pop.
Yeah.
Treebeard, you know what I mean? And I thought, nah, these guys, I've got to interview these guys. It took me a while. I'm thinking, they're not much into the genre that I usually do, but you guys just keep hitting it, and then I started listening to yours, and fucking excellent, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Much for being on the show. I totally appreciate it.
Oh, good, man. Thank you for having me.
Not the norm. I know it's not the norm interview that you've probably done, but
that's all right. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
That's about
Cheers,
your
man.
time, man.